Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And for today's episode, I have on with me a very special guest. I'm pleased to welcome Bill Munoz, who is the singer, guitarist of a South Florida band, Drive Choir. You may have heard of them. If not, I got to tell you, there's not a ton available as far as their story on the internet. So this will be the very first time that we're going to capture the full story of Drive Choir. And Bill is here to tell it. Hey, Bill, welcome in. How are you?
Good, Mr. Kaiser. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on here with me. So, how are things going with you? What have you been up to?
Good, good. Very excited to be on here. You're doing a wonderful thing for the history of Florida music. Really appreciate it. I've been just living life, I guess, going through over the last 30 or so years since Drive Choir, lots of music retail. Some of the folks that knew us back then knew that Michelle and I, my father-in-law, he owned a guitar shop, famous guitar shop in Miami. And so that got me into the retail world. But that was a lot of what we've been doing. That's kind of what we've been up to, and just other businesses I've been helping develop. Friends of mine that there's a motorcycle business that I'm helping them develop their staff on and all that. So really, just for the last several years, non-music related stuff.
Okay. Well, we're going to take that trip and talk about the music and
Oh
talk about
boy.
the journey. So, we're going to time travel today.
Okay.
Are you ready to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So let's go back to the origin story of where you grew up and some of your earliest memories of getting into music.
Okay. So for me, for Michelle, for Chuck, for Jeff, our first drummer, we are all, so Jeff grew up in Indiana, but for all of us, we're all born and raised in Miami, and we were band geeks basically. And I met Chuck in junior high school, and we were kind of like into the same types of music. I met him in a math class or something like that in junior high, and we were into everything. I mean, like, you can probably tell from the music that it's like a mishmash of a lot of different things. So whether it was punk rock or whether it was prog rock or whether it was heavy metal, we were just into everything. And we kind of connected, and we went and traded our band instruments in and bought guitar and bass. And then we started just playing music together for many years, and through junior high and high school, and a mishmash of cover bands, and we didn't ever put anything out in that time. But towards the end of high school, we found more people interested, and that's where that first band, Us, came from. So that had Brian in it, who later became the second drummer of Drive Choir, and that had Sergio, the singer, and then a keyboard player, Tom, and then later on Sigurd. And we recorded that record that I sent you.
Yeah, thank you for sending this record. I had not seen this one before, and I know, sorry for the glare here, but it's called Shapes.
Yes. There's a kind of a psychedelic photo on the back of it, right?
It is, yeah. So how did this band form?
So that came out of the Miami Springs High School at the end of towards the end of high school. It was me, Chuck, Brian, like I said, and Sergio, and we just all kind of had different musical tastes, and that's kind of what that record depicts. I always call it a disaster because there's pieces in there that could have been good, but everybody wanted to smash their idea in there. And with all due respect, that's fine. But the songs became not, they didn't have fluidity. So that's why I called it a disaster. But and the singing
What
kind
were
of
you
didn't
guys
really.
what were you guys listening to music wise? Do you remember some of the bands that were being played at that time?
Yeah. God, so much. Early 80s, mid 80s, hardcore, like, MDC and Corrosion Conformity and all that stuff. Um, Good metal, like the Iron Maiden, let's say, Number of the Beast and Power Slave, and um, there's Judas Priest, AC/DC, um, a lot of retread music that I would listen to, which I love. Like, I mean, I like the early Cars stuff, Cheap Trick stuff, um, Pink Floyd. I mean, it's not necessarily bands from that time because we would just listen. Like, for example, I'm a big fan of Burt Bacharach, the songwriter from the 60s and 70s, a tremendous songwriter. Paul Williams, great songwriter. Um, uh, New Wave. Um, I'm one of the rare people that will admit that I was into the Flock of Seagulls. They were a really good band. Same thing with Duran Duran, early Duran Duran. Tremendous band, great songwriters. Um, yeah, so I mean, I can go through a whole scan of bands. There's a band, oh, here's a good one. So my favorite guitar player of all time was Randy Rhoads, the early first two Ozzy albums, solo albums. He was into a band that I was obsessed with. And it's funny because when we first started recording with Rat, he had this album cover on the wall. And I was like, oh my God, you're into Bebop Deluxe? And the guy's guitar player is called Bill Nelson. And he went on later to be a producer for most of those new wave bands in the early 80s, like Flock of Seagulls and all this. Bill Nelson is just an amazing musician. So kind of you got a lot of elements of prog rock, punk, new
Right.
wave. Oh, and we were all into, again, we have no we're not ashamed of saying we were huge Bee Gees fans and ABBA. And it sounds weird, but because the music doesn't match, but big Bee Gees, ABBA, um, humongous Pixies fan. I'm a big Pixies. Anything Pixies is good, you know.
You really circled the whole map, really,
Yeah.
when it comes to music and styles and things like that. So, with us, did you guys play a lot of shows? If so, what places were you playing?
Well, again, it goes to the story of we were never properly managed or mentored or had any kind of support. So we kind of just did everything DIY by ourselves. And towards the end of us, we did manage to land a couple of gigs, uh, three, I think, and one of them we didn't play because the band broke up. But so the first one we got booked was Churchill's when it was the one bay. It was not the two bays. It was the old Churchill's. That's the one we didn't play. But we got booked, but the band broke up. The other two were, there was a club in North Miami above a flower shop where so we're on the very tail end of the first punk wave in Miami, the cool bands that I consider cool bands, like, I mean, obviously Charlie Pickett and all those, I'm not saying they're punk, but all that early wave of bands, the Front, the Cookies were a good band. So anyway, all those Cats on Holiday. There were some really cool bands back then, and so we were on the tail end of that. So these bands that were still playing when we got booked at this club were there. That's all you'd see on the playbill. Where all those bands, it's towards their tail end, and it's the you know us starting or whatever. And it was a club called the Banal Club. And it was above a flower shop in North Miami, and the two owners were Rat and what's his name, Boise Bob Boise. Forgot his name.
Oh,
Uh, Boise Bill, Boise Bob, something like
Hal
that.
Hal
Yeah, that's
Hal
him.
Specter.
Yes. And they owned the place and they were super nice. I mean, we were, like I said, we were a disaster, a bunch of kids that didn't know what the hell was going on. And they were super nice. They booked us. First show ever. My amp blows up and Rat walks over, pops it open, puts a piece of tinfoil where the fuse goes, and we were ready to go. It was hilarious. So we play that. They were super cool with us and said they even said, even though we broke up, they said, "Hey, you're welcome back anytime." That was a really cool place. I saw Leo Casino and King Felix play there. That was a really cool. I think the show was called Crustacean Station or something. There was a really cool art music place. And then the other one we played was called The Fawn, and it was this. It was Jerry Lewis muscular dystrophy charity event that had a ton of, I mean, Nuclear Valdez, The Goods, Diane War, I was Bootleg, and the tons of bands. And they put us on at 1 p.m. obviously because we were terrible and we don't we don't have a following or anything. But it was so cool, So that, and then after that we kind of broke up because I wanted to start writing songs. I mean, good songs. And we broke up, and there's other reasons. There was like a lot of substance abuse, tons. We were all like taking LSD and all this fun stuff, exploring. It's all easy to get in Miami. So that band broke up, and I moved with Sig, the keyboard player, and Chuck to a house off of Bird Road near that Our Better hot dog place. And we were going to make a new band, a band that had, we would say, the concept was, how do we shove in all this stuff that we are into? How do we shove it into a 3-minute song? Can we do that? And there's a band that we all know very well that is amazing that did that since the late 70s, and that's Squeeze. Tremendous band. They're able to make a pop song and shove it all in. Men at Work did the same thing. They would do complicated things within a small period of time in a song. So let's try to do that. And so when we were there, eventually the guys couldn't, Sig went on to be an electrician, and Chuck, he was dealing with personal stuff at home. So I ended up just being the only one in the house. And I bought a little 4-track, and I wrote a ton of, and I wish I could find this tape because I wanted to send you this tape, but I couldn't find it. And basically I created a band that we never played out, never released anything, but I did record a full-length record, and it was called New Tones, but that didn't come to fruition. And this kind of leads into the beginnings of Drive Choir, where Chuck and I, we could never find a drummer in Miami, so that would fit what we wanted, and
What year around is this all happening? Because I know Us was more what mid to late 80s.
86 to 87.
Okay.
And then that Our Better house, that Bird Road house or whatever, was 88. And there was some things going on during that time. I worked at a record distributor, an import record distributor, and our distribution warehouse and one in New York were the only ones to get the very first releases of shoegaze music. So I got exposed very early to My Bloody Valentine, Lush, Pale Saints. I mean, all that stuff that just blew my mind. Like, one of my favorite bands is Ride. It's just an amazing band. And that started influencing the songwriting because I'm like, oh, that's kind of what we want right there. They're kind of complicated, but there's short songs, or, I was like, yeah. And at that time, I'm also heavily listening to Pixies, and Chuck and I also listening to Earth, Wind and Fire, even though it's not late 80s, we're listening to that stuff. And so we said, you know what? There's a lot of bands we like from Boston. Maybe we can find a drummer in Boston. So we decided, hey, let's save up our money. So this is like 88 or 89, something like that. Let's save up our money and so that we can move. And so we found an apartment and this is when South Beach was like 1/3 starting to become gentrified, 1/3 elderly people living in these old apartments, and 1/3 bunch of crackheads. So we found an apartment behind the Cameo Theater in an elderly home that was low rent, and we said, all right, we're going to go in there for 6 months, save up our money, and move to Boston. And coincidentally, at that time was when all that stuff was going on at Cameo. So I think there was an episode I watched that you did with Rabbi. So it's around that time.
Okay.
And the Cameo had closed because of asbestos. So we would go to Lincoln Theater. I remember one show, it was MDC, Corrosion. I probably have the wrong bands. Corrosion and Conformity, Gorilla, F. Anyway, the first band, 4 bands, first band, first song, they bust in a bunch of skinheads, blew up the show, and it ruined it for everyone. So all the skins went in there immediately fighting, and it blew up everything. And so anyway, that's around that time. So we're living there.
Was that
and
common for that type of stuff to happen when you were going to shows?
I saw it maybe a couple times. They would get bussed in. They would get bussed in from other counties, Central Florida. The skins would get, from what I recall, it is what it is. I saw a couple shows where they ruined it. So I'm thinking like this is like 1990 now, approximately. We're in those apartments, and we didn't have a name for the band. We moved to Boston in the middle of winter. I don't know what was wrong with us, but the second day we were there was in snow up to our knees. And
right.
Like,
well, what a time doing to move up there is in the
winter. In a Chevy Nova pulling a U-Haul, like trailer. It's like,
wow,
a bunch of idiots. So another disaster. So we get there, and guess what happens? We can't find a drummer. So I'm like, is it us? Is it me? Or is it does our music suck? And no, people are like, no, we're into this. This is really cool. And here's where it gets really interesting. We find an ad in their version of New Times. I forgot what it was called. And there's a guy that's about 30 minutes north in a suburb north of Boston. And he puts down a lot of the bands we like, and we call him. He's like, yeah, I just moved up here about 6 months ago. I moved up here from Miami. We're like, what? Who are you? He said, yeah, I play in a band called Bootleg. And we go, Jeff? Yeah, hey, it's us. It's Bill and Chuck. And he's like, what? It was hilarious, dude. And we drove over to him the very next day, played the tape, and he goes, I'm in the band. I want to be in the band. And within 2 days, we drove back to Miami. And the reason we drove back is because I showed it. My mom used to send me the New Times once a week. And the ads, I couldn't believe what was happening. It looked like a magazine from LA. It was filled with clubs and bands. And I'm like, oh my God, the scene changed. It was, Washington Square, all this. I'm like, yeah, we're going back. And so the way we knew Jeff Fritz, very, very kind person, great guy. The way we knew him was when we were in Us, this was probably that other gig I forgot about. We played a place in South Miami called the Hairy Eyeball. And it was a cool place. What usually would happen in that place, and bands would get, butt hurt sometimes when this would happen, is that nobody would go inside. They would all hang out outside. It was like their version of the Hollywood Sportatorium. So they would all hang out and tailgate and just get obliterated, drinking, smoking, whatever. And nobody would go inside to see the bands unless they were a South Miami band that was known. So like Stranglers of Bombay or Sanction. Very cool guys. Sanction, that band was so kind to us. They were really nice guys. And they had one single that was so awesome. It was called Don't Fuck With My Shit. It was awesome. So the first time we played the Hairy Eyeball, or the only time, we played with Bootleg. And Bootleg with Diane and Lou. And so Jeff Fritz was the drummer. And Jeff and the guitar player, Carlos, I can't remember his name, they actually stayed inside. They didn't go out when we started playing. and they listened to us. And Jeff was all over. He's like, man, because Jeff Fritz is a big time Genesis fan, and so we became friends. And it's coincidental that we run into each other in Boston, and, and he joins, and that's the first version of Drive Choir, but it wasn't called Drive Choir, Medicine Man. So we had these shirts with big dots on them. It was kind of like a Devo-ish kind of vibe, and we eventually, so that's Medicine Man. In the audio file is the B side of Tilt. So that music you hear on the B side is older than the A side. So the B side is Medicine Man, and then we had to change the name because it was kind of stupid even picking that name because it's so obvious that there would be other bands with that name, and there was some band in Europe or something, and so we changed it to Drive Choir, and the A side is the next level, and this is like 1992, right around there. And
Wow. Interesting.
yeah,
So never would have thought that the two different sides of the first release Tilt was earlier material and then later material. So this is and thank you so much for sending
there's
this
only
tape.
there's only two of those left.
You're probably right. I've never seen one of these except when I had Steve Rollman on from Pure
Yeah,
Honey when he came on the podcast and he showed all his collection of South Florida tapes. This was in the collection, and I had never seen one, never even heard it even existed. So thank you so much for sharing the Drive Choir Tilt cassette
there's no
tape
there's no
release.
better place it should reside in, other than there's two places it should reside in. It's in the Florida Sound Archive, and with Jeff Lemlick. You guys, you're doing it. You're making it happen for the history of Florida music. There's other releases out there that I don't know. I mean, of one of them is the Churchill's compilation, and then there was a Washington Square compilation. I don't know if it's number one or number two that we were on. It's a cassette. It's like a double cassette, and the original version of the song "Skin" is on there, and there was Steve Rollman he would release compilations. So we're on one of his compilations, Pure Honey
Was it?
compilation.
And also, you're on this compilation too, The Resident Noise.
That might be it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Resident Noise compilation. You guys are on here too. There's a song,
What's the
You
song?
Know You.
You know you. You remember
Yeah,
that song?
that is the song. Yep. This was
Oh,
also 93 when this
I would
came out.
love to hear that. I don't remember. Like I said, there's stuff. There was a lot of things going on that kind of blurred the mind, and I'm pretty sure Steve has a copy in his immense library and boxes of stuff of our interview. We played a live set on, I can't remember what he called it. I was pirate radio or something. I don't know. And it was above the wormhole. And we played a live set. Were you there? You were playing, right? I think so. This might have been when the band turned into four people. And we played a set of 5 songs, I think. And I recall a lady walking around with a camcorder. So that exists somewhere. And that would be very interesting to see. But and then there was another compilation that we were going to be on that we had already submitted. And this is later Drive Choir. So Mary and what's his name from Star Crunch?
Chris
You just did
Lemugis.
Chris and Mary would put out. They would ask for bands, the bands they liked, to put out releases. They would ask them, "You record it, you do it your way. We're just going to distribute it." And it was such a really cool idea. That was incredibly smart. And Mary caught wind from a friend of ours that worked, the manager at Ed's Guitars, Carl, who played in Snatch the Pebble, and she got a hold of that early version of the second drive choir. The second drive choir was when we were 4 people. Okay, this is 93 now or so. And Jeff had moved. So I guess I'm getting too ahead of ourselves here. But so Jeff had moved to Atlanta because he couldn't stand Miami anymore. And that was basically it. He just wanted to get out of Miami. And we couldn't leave Miami. We wanted to, but we couldn't. So the band kind of went on pause right there in 92, 93. Like right when when was the hurricane? I don't know. Anyway, so
92 was Andrew.
Yeah, it was right around then. And we kind of went on pause for a few months, and I got an 8-track, and I started doing what I was doing years ago at that house by Bird Road. I said, like, let me just go ahead and record everything, and did the drum machine, everything. And Michelle and I were like, what if we hated playing out, okay? And not because we didn't like playing live, is because we couldn't deal with the politics. We couldn't deal with the politics. We didn't like promoters. And we didn't like most club owners. There's the ends of the spectrum. What's an amazing, great club owner? Dave Daniels. Beautiful person. Tremendous person. What's the bad side? The +5, all the butt rock clubs in Fort Lauderdale, the Button South. Just people that think these promoters and the musicians and all that, they were all nice, but the promoters and the club managers and those the butt rock clubs, they think they're poison. They think they're on Sunset Boulevard and they're famous. And so they would just treat bands really negatively. So that's what we didn't like. So going back to the at Hurricane Andrew time, so the drive choir is on pause, and so I start recording, and we recorded like 5 songs, and we were going to call the band, and we weren't going to play out. We were just going to release stuff every month. What if we release a self-made single? We do the artwork at Office Depot. We buy blank cassettes. We put them in there, and we release 500 a month of just like an EP, like 3 songs. And so we decided, let's call the band, and this is a stupid name, but we were going to call it I Live With My Mother. And Chuck was working at the guitar store, the original bass player and the only bass player. And he heard that music, and he was like, we should get this going again. And he goes, who's playing bass on this? And I go, that's me. And he goes, well, that's really good. I go, no, I learned it from you. I was just copying you. And one day, guy walks in the guitar shop, and it's Brian, the original Us drummer. And I played him the cassette, and he wants to join the band. And that's the second version of Drive Choir, and that eventually leads into 11 on 7. So there's 3 songs on 11 on 7 that came from I Live With My Mother.
I see.
It's Back to Zero, Wake Up, and what was the other one? Barbie. Oh, the Mary story, the Star Crunch. So she heard the band, and she heard the Barbie song, and so that's when I was talking about the compilation. They were going to put out a compilation on cassette. It never got released. But what she had, and maybe Chris has it somewhere, is the original version of Barbie, which is the 8-track version, which is different. Anyway.
In terms of the difference of the sound, what makes it different?
There's stuff on drums and arrangements that can't humanly be played. It's just, you'd have to have like 2 drummers and stuff like that. And arrangements like the song Skin, probably went through 4 different versions over time. And then when we recorded with Rat on 11 on 7, he's like, in classic Rat style, which I love him for, he's like, you got to stop doing that. It sounds too much like the Rolling Stones. No, you just be Drive Choir. I love Rat. That's another amazing, kind-hearted a sweetheart of a person, like Steve Rollman, like there's like Dave Daniels. There was people, Lydia, who used to manage Uncle Sam's on South Beach. We played there a lot, and she was a great person. Uh, you know, good people that
Yeah.
helped us out, good people that helped out a band that couldn't figure out how to run a business or whatever, because we didn't really. So we were we were constantly making fun of ourselves. When we wrote songs, we took that seriously, but everything else we didn't take seriously. That's why I created that Johnny Voltage character, who's like a classic British late 70s punk, that you would see hanging out with Generation X and Sex Pistols and the Clash and all that. In that little studio upstairs above the clothing shop, Malcolm and Laren's clothing shop. So, I would talk like, I would just make a bunch of jokes on stage. And one time we canceled a gig because of a promoter, and there was a Button South, horrible person. I forgot her name, Elaine something or other. And she completely changed our time and then just messed with us constantly. So I just killed the character and said, hey, we're not showing up because I died. And we got a phone call from Rat and Steve Rollman. Michelle picks up the phone and it's like, they thought it really happened.
Wow.
So I'm going to pay for it in karma, obviously. But I just couldn't deal with that club.
I want to go back to a few things because we have a lot to unpack with some of the different names you've shared and also the beginnings of Drive Choir. I wanted to ask you, going back to the band's formation, because the name is original, Drive Choir. There's really no other band that I was able to find that had the same name. So kudos for coming up with a band name that was very original. And also the logo of the band. So you can see on top of the cassette, and it's also on some of the other releases too. So whose idea was it to come up with that logo and who was responsible for the way it was stylized?
Um, so the person that's more artistically inclined was a really good artist was Chuck. His brother was an amazing artist also. So we talk at length about Dali and MC Escher, and my favorite artist is Hieronymus Bush from the 1400s. He's the one that depicts all the weird heaven and hell. Anyway, so Chuck was the most artistic inclined. So he was the one that would be like, hey, let's try this or try that. But the one that came up with all of that stuff, logo wise and branding wise, was Jeff. Jeff was the one that would put the zines together. And later on, Michelle and I, when Jeff went to Atlanta, but he put the zines together. And we all contributed. We all had to contribute, but he would organize all that stuff. He'd go to Office Depot. He could put all that stuff together. So for the logo and the branding, that's Jeff and Chucky. And then for the name of the band, we were sitting around. I think we were in the studios up there on Hialeah Drive, and we said, let's just buy a 6-pack and hang out and just try to figure it out. And everybody had to come up with some ideas. And we were hitting a wall. We couldn't figure anything out. And I said, well, what do we sound like? The band at that time was very driving, very, very fast-paced. So we do harmonies, 3-part harmonies, 4-part harmonies. So Drive Choir. That's it.
There it is. The origin story of how we arrived at Drive Choir.
Yeah.
Now, you guys had played a lot of shows, more than us, right? So when it
Yeah.
comes to Drive Choir, I know you mentioned Churchill's as one. You mentioned some other places as well, maybe some not as fondly remembered or didn't do the band justice, like the Button South or even the Plus Five Lounge. So when you think about some of the places that Drive Choir played, what are some good stories you have of some of those different shows? Anything stand out in your memory?
Yeah, there's a few in the positive and in the negative, but that was positive. But I'll get to that story in a second. But there was one show we played at Churchill's that was insanely packed. I couldn't believe we were playing the show because we were like kind of overwhelmed because again we didn't have a manager. We didn't. It was like, oh my god. So we were. Oh, here's another group of sweethearts. The Holy Terror. I mean, the Terrors. Dan would. Sorry. He would check us out a lot. He would hang. He would hang at the corner of that bar. Sweetheart. I remember Rob. So that show was packed. We were playing with the Terrors, Load, and Postface, I think. Yeah. And packed. We get off stage, and I see Rob back there with Rat going back and forth, and I'm like, what's going on? And Rob jumps on stage after we were done, and he goes, I forgot I'm going to paraphrase, but he's like, man, what a show. People aren't going to understand your music. And I go, I don't really give a fuck what people think. And he goes, good, keep it that way. So Rob, Sammy, Dan, those guys great. Postface guys, tremendous. That show was so awesome. Bobby, Load, good people. I think Bobby was like at one point brought us a pitcher of beer while we were playing. It was Fernie was there from, I don't know, another good band of good people. That was very memorable. There was a show at Uncle Sam's. That Rat came out to check us out and see if he wanted to record us. And this is early. This is a trio drive choir. So before we became four, we were playing. And at that time, that day, Ozzy Osbourne was playing at the Miami Arena. And I'm just trying to get the crowd like, being that, like I said, I was always joking around, making fools of ourselves. And I said, hey, this last song is going to be Paranoid from Black Sabbath because we got word that Ozzy died tonight at the Miami Arena. The Miami Arena. And everybody was stunned. And we went into Paranoid. We hadn't even practiced it, but we knew how to play it when we were kids. And we end the show, and Rat was laughing. All these people were like, because they knew I was fucking around because that's what I would just constantly stir it up. And that was memorable. And then there was one show we played at the Plus Five, where 2 songs in, and I always, when people want us to leave, I'll just blame myself and like, oh, maybe we're just not good enough. Maybe our music sucks or something. And I hear in the monitor, because there was nobody there, so these clubs in Fort Lauderdale would always ask us, where's your following? And I'm like, where's your following? I'm not talent. You hired us to play for your crowd. If I have a following, well, I should just get a warehouse and charge admission there. But anyway, so they were just really nasty people there. I think it was run by some mob or something. But I hear in the monitor after the second song, the soundman go, last song, you have to leave. So I go, all right, last song, guys. And by the way, the Plus Five fucking sucks. Like, what? You can imagine what happened after that. And we were like being chased out. We'd throw everything in the van and we hauled ass. It was freaking hilarious because we were being chased by these big ass gorilla goon guys, so that was memorable. And I mean, the Wormhole shows, awesome. Loved them.
Because I was up in Palm Beach. So what was that like?
I loved it. It was like being at Churchill's. I mean, Steve was the greatest host, was so freaking nice, so supportive. I mean, man, it was just really cool. I liked the Palm Beach shows a lot. And then there was these other random shows. I can't even remember the clubs. We liked the Square. Doc was very nice to us also. Doc was tremendous with us. And if you remember, I don't know if Diane talked about this or anybody else. Jeff, after Bootleg, played in another band. It was the Dashboard Saints. And Doc was the bass player. And Dennis, I forgot the singer's name, Dennis something or other. And yeah, so those are some of the shows I can remember.
Those are some good stories, Bill. And did Drive Choir play out anywhere else outside of Miami to Palm Beach, maybe other parts of the
state? Did we play
state?
Tampa once? Naples. I think we played in Naples. That was it. Well, again,
Naples.
completely bad business. Don't know. We needed somebody to like organize stuff like that for us. We couldn't. We were bad at it, and yeah, Naples. I thought we played in Tampa once. In the what's that little area? Yeah, we did play in Tampa. What was that place called?
Like Ybor
Ybor
area?
City.
Okay.
There was a club similar to Churchill's, like that kind of vibe. I forgot the name of it. Yeah, but that was it. Really, nothing else. No tours. Um, we got close. Um, there was a guy that came and he actually did an article on us. He did a record review. Very famous guy, Jack Rabid, and from I forgot the publication in New York. He's a friend of Rat, and he gave us a nice review, and we were gonna play up there, but it never ended up materializing. And that's actually funny because the one of the first times I interacted with Rat was during the US Band, and I already talked about the Banal Club, but there was a thing every year called the New Music Seminar in New York, and it was like where bands could like get better at the music business and learn how to do XYZ to get heard. And what came with the ticket, when you bought the ticket, it was 4 days or 3 or 4 days. You got to go to every club for free and see all the band showcases for free. And we go to Stig and I, the keyboardist for us. We go to the Knitting Factory, and the Knitting Factory was 3 floors, and we went up to the top floor, and in comes Rat with Kim Gordon and Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, and they did a noise set. They just them 3 on synths and whatever. And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" So it was pretty funny. That was pretty cool. That's I know I went kind of side route there, but that was an interesting memory.
Sure. And the connection with Rat obviously is huge. And I remember reading in one of the articles in the New Times where Rat said something along the lines of Drive Choir was one of his favorite local bands. Did he ever share any of that with you guys as he was recording you? Because you recorded almost everything I want to say at Sync Studios.
Well, I gave him $1,000 to say that.
That's
No,
it? Just 1,000? It's not too
I'm,
bad.
I'm kidding. No, he's just a sweetheart. He's just a great person. We recorded Tilt at Steve Watt's studio in North Miami, and Steve Watt was an incredible drummer, incredible producer, an engineer. He was I don't recall all the bands he was in, but he was in a band in the late '80s, early '90s called the Shrugs, and Snatch the Pebble. He played with with Aria and Carl, and that's where Tilt was recorded. The A side of Tilt. The Medicine Man side of Tilt was recorded at Natural Sound Studios in South Miami, and we went away, and that's where I believe the Us record was recorded in Natural Sound, and we went away from there because that guy that was the owner there, real nice guy, Tom, but he recorded in a style that was everything had reverb on it, and we were like, no, we want it dry, we want it really dry. And he would gloss everything, and we're like, okay, we can't do this anymore. So then we recorded the A side of Tilt with Steve Watt in his studio, and then don't remember where did we record Close Your Eyes and King of the World. That's probably at Rats. Yeah, it was the first sync, the sync that was above the spoken word club that was on Lincoln. It was on Lincoln. And it's funny, when we were recording one of those singles, we go downstairs and it was like they had the little sandwich board out there of who was doing spoken word, and Henry Rollins was doing that night. It was like, oh my God, it's hilarious. Yeah, Close Your Eyes was recorded there. King of the World was recorded there. Obviously the Live at Churchill's was mixed there.
Right.
And and 11 on 7 was recorded at the second version of Sync or the third version of Sync. I can't remember, which was near that blues club in downtown. What was that? Tobacco Road. There was
Tobacco Road.
near there. Brat had moved the studio to, and that's where 11 on 7 was recorded.
I'm going to share the covers of the two 7 inches, which I love the covers of them. And so we have the two that you mentioned here. So let me put them in the frame here. That way it shows up a little better.
The blue one is that's a photo from a really bad B horror movie called the Cars That Ate Paris
Never
from
saw
the
that
60s or
one.
early 70s. And then the second one is a Hieronymus Bosch painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights, I believe.
I like them.
But it was fitting because he's on a throne, right?
Right. Talk about the label name, because I know that uh Maggot Records, was that an idea of someone in the band, or is that a
Yes,
joke from someone at the studio?
Jeff. We were. I think we were like making fun of somebody, or again, just being jokesters, as we usually did, and not taking ourselves seriously. And I think I might be wrong on this. We probably should ask Jeff, but I think we considered ourselves nobody's maggots, and kind of that. I think that's what it meant, you know. But Jeff came up with that. We all went along with it. It's like, yeah, that's perfect.
Did he draw it up too, the little maggot?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he sure did. He was good at branding. He was good at that stuff. It was it was it it was sad when he had to move, because when he was moving and we had taken that pause and he was getting prepared to move, he asked, you know, hey, let's do one last show, but I don't want to play drums. You know, Jeff wanted to also come out front and with a guitar and sing along. And we were all for that. We just got to find a drummer. And I was more for like, what if you switch back and forth and, you know, anyway, and make the band 5-piece? It could be even better. Kind of like Squeeze does, you know, because that guy, the main guy there in Squeeze, plays everything. But the last show with Jeff, we got booked. So we were going to do it acoustically. And we did do it acoustically. So it was at the Stephen Talk House. You remember that place? It was like off of behind the Cactus Cantina, like behind Washington Square, somewhere back there.
I was
on
never
Sixth.
there, but I've had other guests talk about it.
Yeah, so it was a cool place. I mean, they brought in the big acts, like famous, you know, national acts. But so we went and did the acoustic, and Jeff heard the I Live With My Mother stuff for the first time. That was the first time he heard it. So it's basically the early part of the second drive choir, and Michelle was there playing the flute and guitar parts, lead guitar parts on flute through a distortion pedal and harmonizer and delay. But the rest of us were on acoustic. And in the middle of the show on stage, Jeff goes, "Holy crap, if I knew you guys were working on this, I wouldn't have left." And it was like he'd already planned it and whatever. And he also wanted to get into like more of like a Metallica kind of like that kind of world, and be the singer up front, and which, I mean, we were always open to anything, but it was already too late, and that was an interesting gig.
Did you guys have any other songs that were not released at that point that you also had, maybe not necessarily recorded, but you did play live?
Well, the one that you just mentioned on that Steve Rollman compilation, I don't remember, honestly. I'd love to hear that song.
It's a good song. It is a good one.
Oh my God, now you're going to get me going here. Like, man, I wish I could hear it. So there's the two that were on that I Live With My Mother recording, that 8-track recording, but they never made it over to Drive Choir 11 on 7. One song was called Elaine. The other one was called What It Means. Do you remember any other ones?
Was Elaine about the lady at the button south?
No, no,
Okay.
no. Elaine was about a office worker that has nobody, is lonely, had no relationships, but she had 300 channels of cable TV and her cat. And that's kind of it's like a sad song,
Sure.
basically. Um, uh, so
Any cover songs you guys would play pretty consistently at shows, or maybe just had gone over well with people that would be in attendance?
no, just occasionally when we were like wanted to stir it up, we'd play Paranoid or something, or we start. Nah, not really. We would do weird things like there would be some person in the audience, drunk, wasted, play some Deep Purple, man, play some Van Halen, whatever. And I would go, well, we're gonna play you some Beatles right now, and it's off the Gray album, and we play one of our own songs. And there is no Gray album, right?
Right.
That kind of hilarious stuff. There was um well, I told you about the Alter Ego band in the past, right? So there was somebody, I can't remember who put this together. I don't think it was Glenn Rich. Glenn Richards put together a Cheap Trick night where you everybody that got invited had to play a couple Cheap Tricks on. That was a cool show. Um, there's somebody, I think it was Zach or somebody put together the Alter Ego night, and it could have been Mary. I don't know. And there was two of these. I recall there was two of them, and we would show up. So you can't show up as drive choir, right? Like Postface was at them, and they showed up as the South Florida Militia. I think that was the name, the South Florida Militia. And they would come in with trumpets and horns. It was hilarious, great. I love Postface. This guy's so nice. Um, uh, we were Butt Vomit, and we'd come in and we'd had brownies shaped as turds, and as we're playing them, we're throwing them at people, and they're eating them, and they were, and it was complete noise. There was no structure. Michelle was on a guitar, just going through distortion, no flute, guitar, harmonizers. I had a slide steel. Brian was playing bass, and Chuck was on drums. So we'd all just switched around, and we just. There was like one song, we called it the Lily Pad Squad, which was part of something there was an Alter Ego band with the band Us called the Lily Pad Squad. Nothing released, one show played at Churchill's. So we did the versions of the Lily Pad song, Your Mama's Pussy Space Antenna. It was just noise, just pure noise. The funny thing is, we're loading up the van after this Alter Ego night show, and Dave Daniels walks out and he goes, "It's the greatest stuff you've ever done." And I'm like, "Oh my god." That was pretty funny. He loved it. He loved it. But that's Dave. Dave was or is still, hopefully, knock on wood, very free spirited and so open minded, and we appreciated that with him.
How important was Dave, do you think, to the scene,
Oh my
considering?
God, he would be one of the heads you would put on Mount Rushmore. You got to put Rat up there, Dave Daniel. I mean, you'd have to put more than four heads, because you got all the folks from the early '80s, right? And they kind of set the path. I think that South Florida scene, and I think several people have said this on your show, extremely underrated. Okay, both eras, the early '80s one and the early '90s one, extremely underrated and not appreciated nationally, because, as many of your guests have said this to you, people didn't want to pour down there, because that's a lot of lost money. So like, these bands that you would have been able to open up for, I'll give Smashing Pumpkins credit, because they did come to Washington Square, but most bands would not do that. And if they would have, more local bands would have been opening up and be recognized, and the scene, I think, would have taken off big time in both eras. Yeah, but there were so many good. I mean, I already mentioned I Don't Know, really good band. The Creamies, I mean, KLS, I mean, really good, really good.
You have any good KLS stories?
Um, we played with them several times. It was just fun. There was never issues or anything. It was just fun. I remember there was a bar that was under the metro rail off of South Dixie Highway. It was like a lesbian bar, and they on Tuesdays they had local bands, and we played there with them. And they go up on stage and they rip into um, a Beatles song, an early Beatles song, "She Loves You," in a KLS version, and I was like, "That's fucking genius." It was amazing. Um, yeah, I don't know KLS, the Terrors. There was a band called the Cell 63. Super nice guys, good band. I mean, I can go over. There's a band called One. You got your Load. You got your Post Face. There was a band called One up there. There was. I'm missing somebody, and they're going to probably get pissed that I didn't mention them. There was so much good talent. It just didn't get recognized, and I wish there would have been some. I mean, obviously you had John Tovar, who had at one time, not only Marilyn Manson, but Vesper Sparrow and a few other bands, I think, under his umbrella there, and they got noticed. But they were really like the Marilyn Manson that the world knows wasn't the one from the local scene. That was a different band. It was more raw, and they would walk around with their lunch boxes. They go to all the clubs, and they have these little lunch boxes with the other band, Jack Off Jill. So they walk around with their lunch box. Totally different band.
Did you see those bands perform at some of the different places in South Florida at that time?
Yeah, yeah, all of them. I have a funny story. One time when we were wearing the dot shirts, like Devo style or whatever. Jeff and I went to go see the last Pixies tour of the original Pixies era. So it would be the album Trompe du Monde. Great album. There's a song on there called Motorway to Roswell. It's freaking amazing. Anyway, so we go there, and the Pixies are like, it was kind of a disaster. Like Kim Deal is wasted. She couldn't figure out her lines. And David Lovering, the drummer, was on massive amounts of coke. You could see him snorting on the side. And they were like, speed up and slow down. And we're watching, and in comes Brian and I forgot the singer for Jack Off Joe. They come in with their lunch boxes. It was like a different
Jessica.
Yeah, yeah. And they just give us a nod, and we're all like listening, and we're like wondering what's going on with the Pixies, man. They're like losing it. But yeah, so I saw all these bands. Pretty much all of them. I used to love going. There was a little club. If you walked, I guess, north on Washington, you walk out of the square, you make a right, and about a block and a half down, there was a little club on the corner, like a restaurant and club, and the Mavericks would play there all the time. And I used to love, because you go in there and they play on the floor. There was no stage, and you're standing right in front of them listening to them. And the original Mavericks, it was powerful. They had like a lot of power in its country music. It's whatever we want to call it, but it was powerful. And what's his name? Raul, right? Raul Malo. He used to come in the guitar shop. Super nice guy. I'm so happy they actually attained success.
Right.
The early version of that band was powerful.
I know you mentioned John Tovar, and he had a lot of connections to a lot of these bands you mentioned, the Mavericks, Nuclear Valdez, Marilyn Manson, and what have you. You mentioned too that Drive Choir didn't really have any management or anyone that was really leading it in that way. Did you guys ever talk to someone like John Tovar or anyone else? Were any conversations ever had in terms of trying to get management?
Yeah. To truly answer the question correctly is that we're all a bunch of introverts, geeks, and pretty much antisocial, not in a negative way. We just, we weren't that outgoing with that kind of stuff. And so we'd send them a pack or something, maybe follow up with one call or something, and kind of get brushed off usually. And I'm not saying we got brushed off because somebody didn't was being mean or anything. Just got brushed off because maybe they were overloaded, or maybe not the style they wanted to be in, or maybe they thought our music sucked or whatever. It doesn't matter what the reason. But we, I'll blame that on us or me. And we would initially try, and then just kind of move on if no reply. We just move on and keep making music. Our thing was to write songs, write a lot of songs, write good songs, and go about that. The one person that was totally responsive was Rat. Pretty much all the time. I'll give you a good story. Is that we were at the shop, and I had gotten really sick, and I could barely even talk. And he calls up, and he calls the store, and he goes, "Hey, you guys are playing tonight at Churchill's." I'm like, I can't barely talk, can't barely breathe. He goes, "No," and then so Michelle gets on the phone with him, and he's like, "Tell him you guys are just showing up. I'm putting you on the flyer right now." So that show was with the Terrors, somebody else. Anyway, so he was always very responsive and very helpful, and always supported us. And there was a few like that, but nobody ever said, "Hey, I'm just gonna do this for you, and you guys, here's a little contract or whatever business agreement." Nothing like that.
Did you feel like some of the local publications of the era, like Jam and Scrape and the New Times, were they at all kind to you guys too in terms of reviews and trying to talk about what the band was doing?
Funny you mentioned Scrape. Yes, they were very, very responsive and very supportive. Um, I wouldn't say because it's kind of hard to speak for a corporation like New Times, but what I can tell you is Greg Baker was extremely supportive. His interviews were really good. His questions are really good, and his stories. He in that, if you can find it, it was online somewhere, but there's a New Times article from the early. I think the band was still Medicine Man, and he describes this matronly woman coming into the office and screaming at us because we were playing the cassette too loud. It was something I loved the way he wrote things out. It was really cool. And then nothing Jam. I don't remember anything ever being. I don't think we were ever in Jam. Yeah, a lot of zines. I know we were approached. I don't remember who, but I know we sent out a lot of cassettes to zines around the country,
Right.
and they wrote something up for us. But and then I mentioned the Jack Rabid article that he did.
I know one of the first times I ever heard Drive Choir on the radio was on 88.5 WKPX at a Piper High School because they'd play a lot of local bands.
Wow,
And did you have any knowledge of
not.
88.5 WKPX and
Oh
the fact that,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I knew about the station, but I don't remember being told or getting airplay. The ones that would play us a lot. I mean, it got to the point where I wouldn't play King of the World at our gigs because I was just sick and tired of it. And VUM played the hell out of that song. They played that one in silver, and um, there was a DJ there. I believe her name was Laura. Was it Laura? Super supportive of the band. Super nice person. She's the one that, I don't know if I already mentioned this today, but she got us in when we were a trio. I think we were still Medicine Man. And we went in there to do we did 2 songs acoustically in the studio in VUM, and so it would be on what used to be called carts. They would record everything on carts. So if they still have those carts, it's in there somewhere. But she played all that song a lot, and the reason they played Silver, I don't know if Silver is in any of the recordings I gave you. Might be on that Tilt recording.
It is on Tilt.
Okay. The reason she played Silver there is because Quit, who we were friends with, they're super nice guys. They would constant. If they showed up at a club, a church, or wherever, and we were playing, they would immediately come over and start yelling at us, "Silver, Silver!" So I think they somehow got VUM to play that a lot. And it kind of, Silver was kind of like one of those kind of proto pop punk kind of songs, right? Like the quick 3-minute, fast pace. Yeah, those guys supported. Like I said, most everyone was really nice. It's just some of those club owners in Lauderdale and the promoters, Salador, and all those people that came out of those companies. They were operating at a different level. That you're a peon, you're a maggot, and we are the popular people. One of those.
I know that in addition to some of the records we've been talking about, some of the releases, you did mention this a little bit a while ago, the 11 on 7. And I'm just going to bring up the cover. And what's interesting about this is by looking at it, you would think this is a 7-inch, but it's not. It's a CD album. So talk about that and just the idea behind putting it out. Maybe it was originally intended to be a 7-inch. I don't know. But talk about the concept around the 11 on 7 and who's on the cover. Who is that?
I'll answer that first. That was some kind of corrupt politician in Miami that got busted for something. I don't remember the guy's name. That's another thing we did with the music. There's some of the lyrics when you listen to them, you'll notice that we talk a lot about the authoritarian elitists, people that don't want to ever support the maggots. But the 11 on 7 branding or whatever we want, packaging was one of those things where we're again being ourselves and being mischievous and making a joke. So we couldn't figure out what to call. We were in Rat's apartment, all 5 of us, and we couldn't figure out what to call it. And Rat is actually, I think, the one that said it. He said, well, there's 11 songs on a 7-inch disc. And then he may have been the one also to say to put it in a 7-inch cover. I'm pretty sure, or somebody, or Brian, maybe. Brian or Rat? Michelle's here, by the way, but she's camera shy.
Yes, okay.
She's camera shy.
And Michelle, that was her first Drive Choir release where she appeared on, right?
Yeah.
How did she get involved with the band?
I walked up to her at Washington Square. She was at the bar, and I knew her dad was the guitar shop owner. And I went up to her in a classic, horrendous catastrophe pickup line. And I said, hey, any new guitars at the store? And from then on, 35 years later, we're still together.
Wow. That line really set it off, huh?
If it wasn't for her, I'd definitely be dead. She's the captain of the ship. But right now she's keeping 3 cats in order, behavior.
She played flute on the 11 on 7. Was she trained classically at all, or did she play flute when she was in grade school or something to that effect?
Yeah, another band geek. Went to college, all music, piccolo, flute, piano, what else? Guitar, voice, guitar, everything. Her and Jeff are the best musicians in the band. Jeff went to Indiana University, which is known as the most famous drum corps line. And he played in the drum corps there. Jeff played guitar, piano, sang. He did all those harmonies along with Chuck on the first records. So when we were doing I Live With My Mother, the part before the second Drive Choir, I said, look, I don't want to play lead guitar anymore. I don't want to worry about solos or anything. I just want to write the best songs we can write. And so I said, why don't you just put your flute through a distortion pedal, a harmonizer, and a delay into a bass amp, and you do all that. That's kind of how that started. And people would go like, "What is that?" And when they would hear the recordings, is that a guitar? What is that? And it's like, no, it's just a dragon. No, it's yeah. So that's how that came up. Plus, she can sing really well.
I mean, you
And
don't normally hear a lot of alternative bands. I'm using that term broadly. You don't really hear a lot of bands like that with flute. Usually, when I hear flute, I think of a band like Jethro Tull.
right, right. Like some prog rock band or something.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
It's different.
yeah. And I also another goat guitar player that I would probably fall into my top five. So you got Randy Rhoads, Alan Holdsworth, Johnny Marr, Bill Nelson. Another one is Robert Fripp from King Crimson. So there's a second King Crimson album called Red, and it's just a trio. It's him, Bill Bruford on drums that used to play in Yes, and John Wetton, who was the Asia and the band UK singer bass player. Robert Fripp's guitar style that I think he called it Frippatronics or something, and I kind of got that feeling when she played some solos because the flute is a monophonic instrument, right? You can't play chords; you got to play one note at a time, and it sounds really cool when you put it through all that stuff. So it was interesting. I like that. It's like the stuff I liked in the band was usually stuff that I didn't even create. Like my favorite song ever, drive choir song, is Power, and Jeff wrote that song, the drummer. That's on Tilt, I think. Yeah. Anyway, I hope I answered your question.
You
I
did.
go off
And
on tangents.
the sound, though, had changed, I would say, pretty noticeably when it came to the 11 on 7 release. And the band had changed, right? Different people in the band at that point. So, as far as the sound of the band, when you all would play out, was there a different reaction to some of the newer songs, perhaps versus some of the ones you were playing before that?
People liked the second version better. So it was more, uh, oddly enough, we kind of went back to making things a little more textured and complex. I think the reaction was so people liked, we got a good reaction from songs like Wake Up. We got good reactions from Barbie for sure. Rat he loved when Michelle would sing. So you hear that in Barbie, you hear that in, um, what's the one after that? I Feel Sick. So I think that and maybe it could have been just that we were being more social and people were actually now paying attention. I don't know if it was the music because it changed that people got into it more, or if it's just we weren't like cave dwellers, And I have a funny story on that because so we would show up at gigs and we kind of sit way in the back corner and just have a pitcher of beer and just wait for our gig and then play, and then we would get in the van and leave. We wouldn't like hang out. We just not that kind of people, and it's not because we think highly of ourselves or anything. It was just we're kind of aloof, kind of geeks. And one day, everybody was in the pool area of Churchill playing pool, and we were the only ones on the other side hanging out. And I think it was Jim Camacho, and he came over and he goes, "So why are you guys always sitting by yourselves? You're just like too like famous or something?" And I go, "No. I go, we just don't do well in social things. We're not small talk people. We just don't know what to do." He goes, "No, come on over, play pool with me." So those guys are really nice. Those goods guys are really nice. And so we went over there and then we got into a 4-person match. I think it was me, Jim, Dan, and who else? Zach. I don't remember what's Zach's last name. This guy played like an ovation with a snakeskin looking. He was a soloist and he was a really nice guy. Yeah. Anyway.
And with the 11 on 7 release being the last, as far as I'm aware, that was in 1994. Is that around the same time that the band broke up?
Yeah, the band actually never really broke up because so the period after that is I got engulfed by the music retail world, and what we were gonna do was we were gonna not play out, so we didn't have to deal with all this business stuff, and we were going to release, go back to the thing I was telling you about. I live with my mother. Go back to like releasing like either a single every month or a couple of full lengths a year, and we just became too busy.
So, because Drive Choir never officially broke up, are you and the other members, I know you mentioned several during this episode, are you still in touch with all the members, both the first iteration and the second iteration of Drive Choir?
Not so much. Again, it's not because we don't want to. It's just we're kind of just we're not social. We're introverts, and it's so we it's I don't get on the phone and talk about like what like no, not so much. We do occasionally interact with Jeff because he plays in a lot of bands. I don't know if they're cover bands or original bands. He plays in a lot of bands in Atlanta, and and he works at a staging company, so he does lighting for famous bands, so that come in to one of the venues up there. So he sent us like a pile of like Michelle has a huge eBay business. It's like 30,000 items since 1999, and she sells a lot of ephemera and memorabilia and stuff like that. He sent us a bunch of backstage passes for all these bands, famous bands. So yeah, and with Chuck, I haven't talked to him in years, and I don't know what Brian's up to. I thought he was a software programming or engineer or something. Um, yeah, that's about it. I mean, I get my joy out of going into your program and other like Rob's podcast,
Right.
and it brings me back to that stuff. So
It's
you
good.
get old, you start getting reminiscing and stuff.
Sure. It is nice to revisit some of those moments and go back and hear a lot of the stories, especially things that may have been going on simultaneously that you weren't always aware of. You get a chance to hear other people's perspectives on the scene and different places that bands would play and what have you. So I know that there's always these reunion type events that pop up from time to time. Some are years in the making. Do you think there would ever be a point in which if there was something like that down in South Florida that some version of Drive Choir would ever get back to play a show like that?
In theory and mentally, I'm saying, yeah, it's possible. Um, I don't think so because I don't know if I could remember even playing any of those songs, the chords or that sounds crazy, but a few of those songs were in different tunings. So that's why I always had two guitars on stage. The other one was tuned to play um, uh, Barbie and the Fernabulax song with the dog. They were in a different tuning, so they were on a different guitar. So we'd have to practice for like a month. So I don't know if here, let me answer it this way. If I won the lotto and I had $20 million and I told the guys, I call them up and I go, hey, do you want to practice for a month? I'll pay your salary so you don't lose out on your wages. And let's practice for a month and go out there and do it. Something like that. I know that sounds crazy and far-fetched, but that's
That
what we
does,
are. We're crazy people.
right.
You can tell from those, like that insert. I'm sure you looked at the insert in the CD. There's a lot going on there. A lot of stuff to process. I wish I had a zine. You know who? Like when we played one time at Churchill's, Michelle and Jeff Lemlick would play in that little poker machine there that was on the corner of the bar, or the trivia machine. And one day, Jeff, I go, hey, I got this thing. I don't know what it was I was going to give him. And I go, there aren't that many out there. It was some release or something. I don't know what it was. And he goes, oh no, I already got that. Like it was a zine or something. He goes, you wouldn't believe how much stuff I have that is from your band. And he would he was one of the few people in South Florida, he would purposely come out and see our shows on purpose, directed. A lot of bands saw us play, but they would just usually be like, traveling around at night or whatever, and they'd end up at Churchill or wherever, and they'd see, oh, it's Drive Me, and they would hang out. Most of the time, our crowd was musicians and not so much, we weren't the pretty gang that people would come out to see or whatever. It was like musicians and stuff like that. And Jeff, Lemlick, he worked at WCIX Channel 6, and so he was the producer at night. And so he'd get out at 11 p.m. and, he's full of energy, and he's like, I'm just going to go see bands. That guy is probably the person, maybe other than Rat and a few other people, that have seen the most amount of shows in South Florida. And I don't know what he's doing now. He moved to Central Florida somewhere. I don't know. I hope he's okay. Another sweetheart.
Yeah. So many people have such an important part in the story when you think about it holistically. And it's great to hear this story from you telling it about Drive Choir, and haven't ruled out the possibility of some kind of reunion if you hit the lottery. So, so it's just been great getting a chance to chat with you, Bill. Because, like I
Same
said,
here.
when we first started this episode, if you were to go online and do some searching for Drive Choir, there's not a whole lot in terms of information about the band. And some of those articles that may have been once printed in one of the publications like the New Times and what have you, you can't always find those. You may have to reach out to the University of Miami to get some of those archives, because you just can't find a lot of that stuff just by searching for it. So it's great that you came on to tell the story and give people some more perspective of the band's history. And it's just great. So thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate the opportunity to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. What I would close out here on is that you are the one that's doing an amazingly important thing for the Florida music community and archiving this. I don't know if you understand the high level of work that you're doing, and I appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of other people appreciate it. So thank you for having me on, and keep doing what you're doing. It's great. And let's go Dolphins.